Thank you very much. So yeah, I'm Dave, I'm an architect. I'm a professor with the Hammond School of Architecture at Drew University, and I lead a team called Metaphora Blue that exists to create VR experiences targeted for kids and health. And as an architect, I believe in the transformative power of spaces that we design, their ability to transport us and our imaginations, to elevate humanity, to orient our worlds and encourage exploration and evolve our understanding. However, as architects, we also have a history of designing spaces that often do more damage than positive in terms of their outcomes. This has happened through spaces of segregation, environmental destruction, or in the case of my talk here today, health. Obviously, an architect designed this room. In fact, I have designed a room almost exactly like this. And as a designer, I understand why this room exists. There are reasons of cost, there are reasons of adaptability, there's reasons of accessibility, all that lead us to design this type of room. However, as an architect, I also know that we have a responsibility and capability to do more. And thus my topic on the work today that I'm presenting, a blueprint for therapeutic virtual worlds. We began our early projects with the ideas of building what we know, creating an escape for kids from their hospital rooms by using architecture. I presented this concept to a group of students, and they're all pretty amazing humans, and they just poured themselves into the work. The result of our very first class was over 2.5 hours of VR architectural tours, each around 10 minutes long, taking kids everywhere from ancient Rome to a chapel in Arkansas, the mountains of Switzerland, literally around the world through time. This became, upon reflection, a symbiotic process of kids learning about architecture with the goal of teaching kids about architecture while helping them heal, to get kids thinking about architecture to provide me with more architecture students. The amazing thing about this that happened in terms of the development was not just the content created, but the things that we didn't expect. And one of the things was voices in this case. We thought we would bring in voice talent, but what we discovered was my architecture students talking through this process created a sort of intimacy. It was, here, let me hold your hand, and I'm going to take you to this amazing space that I love and spent 3 months working on. Our bigger picture lessons then begin to carefully articulate themselves for VR projects to promote healing and recovery. And what we learned was a set of terms that we constantly use to drive our work. The first is ambient spatial intensity. This is the antithesis of shooting zombies. The goal with ambient intensity is to create and engage curiosity rather than adrenaline-fueled intensity, crafting a place that is familiar, reducing distress, but distant enough to engage a sense of exploration and wonder. Next, iterative exploration. Kids should not spend more than about 10 to 15 minutes at a time in VR, as emotive displacement can be a little bit too powerful and trigger negative side effects. As such, we need to design experiences that are both repetitive and iterative with basic modifications for each experience. Experiential post-processing. Provided a shorter time span for kids within VR, it is imperative to each game to continue into the real space, connecting key aspects of the experience into the analog world. This increases the overall escapism provided by each experience and builds social opportunities for shared experiences outside of VR. And finally, education through immersion. As a relatively new media, VR is not about replacing existing forms of communication. It is a new modality to express, explore, and inform. And as a result, intentional focus should be made to leverage education within immersive experiences. So our first pass was simply doing 3D printing along with each experience. So each location that kids get a chance to visit, there's also a 3D print that is associated with it, that then kids can take their own design aspirations to afterwards. This teaches my kids in architecture school a little bit about fabrication, and again teaches a little bit of design process along the way. So after we got through that process and after we built our vocabulary, we began to discuss how do we push our ideas further. And my initial inspiration came from my daughter, who at the time was 11 and referred to as Beta Player 1, because we constantly dropped her into our VR experiences because she actually was our target audience. So Olivia is now 13, and unfortunately she is not here this year, but she did present virtually last year. Our spring breaks didn't line up. I'm sorry, she's in school. But I'm just going to let her tell it sort of in her own words.
I wanted to build a game where you have the chance to learn about something different, using my favorite creatures of all time, dragons. When my dad would show me his work and explain to me about what this whole medical virtual reality stuff was and what it can do for kids stuck in a hospital room, I thought it was okay, but I wanted to see an entirely new world with something that didn't exist anywhere else. This is Reggie, my horse, and one of the most important things that I've learned through my riding experience, that it isn't just about jumping on the back of a horse. If that's all you do, they're gonna be a turd. You need to spend time with the horse, grooming them, feeding, cleaning, observing them in their pasture. I wanted to build the same experience with different dragons from my imagination, understanding each dragon's personality, understanding, and needs. When you do those things, you're brave enough to ride. And from those ideas, my dad and I started creating Rising Bravery, a game where you explore environments, learn about a dragon's personality, and apply what you've learned to show understanding, trust, and love, and then get the reward of bonding with and riding on the back of a dragon through their world.
So essentially, I began to realize that what my daughter was designing was an empathy-based MetaPets game. But my feeling was that we could tweak that formula using our developed process through architectural design with ambience, experiential, iterative, and educational components to build something more meaningful to our core audience. MetaPet games are often aggressively manipulative, forcing you to digest enormous amounts of content, often advertising rather than exploration, and generating empathy rather than actually getting a valuable experience. Kelly Lassen with Wired calls such MetaPets games, specifically speaking about Neopets, the greatest mind, and you get to insert your own expletive here, games ever. And understand, this is speaking about gaming on a two-dimensional screen where immersion is imagined. The responsibility that we carry as we move into the metaverse is extensive. We are saturating humans with these experiences that we design. So, we want to welcome you to my daughter's world called Dradia in Rising Bravery. To immediately remove somebody from a hospital room, we did want to go deep into nature, right? And I know we just learned a little bit about nature in the last topic, but we believe in it. We believe in biophilia as a design method. So this is real time in the game engine through a screencast. And my daughter's designed multiple dragons because, clearly a shadow dragon needs to live in a cave and can obviously manipulate light. So you enter the cave at day, you exit the cave at night. We've also looked at different environments. So there are multiple environments throughout this experience. One of my family's favorite here along the Nepali coast. But unlike the Nepali coast, this has a stair that takes you to the top of the mountain where you'll find a dragon barn. One of the other dragon types is called a forest dragon, which can manipulate both weather and the size of trees. I don't know how. Ask my daughter. She knows. It's all in her brain. And of course, there's a light dragon which can elevate you up through an elevator using only light and steam. All of which takes you, you can see it just barely off in the distance, the dragon barn, where you get the chance to interact with these dragons that my daughter has created and animated by hand. So when we put all of it together and put it in a headset, it looks something like this. This is a direct screencast from an Oculus Quest 2. So this is the fidelity that we're working to achieve. Not working to achieve, this is the fidelity that we're at in Quest 2. And it's one of my daughter's dragons. This is Sora. So understanding that we are creating a VR experience that is truly saturated, we can also begin to build a spatial and tonal palette based around emotions. If we can tap into just a bit of that visual power that color carries, we can actually begin to prescribe certain paths of travel or certain experiences based on need. For instance, if you're feeling sluggish, we would advise you to hang a left and let's visit Sora the Fire Dragon. We're going to saturate you with tones of red, the right music, and match you with a dragon that's just slightly hyper. Now, these are not really psychological tugs on your brain, but what we like to refer to as polite triggers, which lead us into another area of development with our VR team, where we are working with Dr. Jenny Siem at Montefiore to look at VR as part of their Arts and Integrated Medicine program, AIMS. With Dr. Siem, my team of students and architects are working to create art therapy projects and an understanding of the polite trigger that belongs both as something therapeutic in the experience as well as driving conversations after VR. The projects that were started here began with student art therapy projects. On the top is an image created by a child with social anxiety, specifically triggered by school. My architecture student, Ryan Wilson, leaned into this notion, making a schoolroom an anxiety-filled space that slowly opens into his personal happy space, chilling around a campfire. The second project was driven by the difficulty of making decisions as a young adult. My student, Navi Gunalan, was drawn to the art piece on the left because of its combination of its calmness and isolation. Navi built a turbulent space with a series of gates that imply travel, but with an impossible set of paths. However, no matter which path you choose, it eventually leads you to a peaceful location. Now, on mentioning AIMS, it would be wrong of me not to mention Olivia Davis at Chill Zone and my original team of architecture students, which have led to a current understanding on what we are building. First, for us, we believe very strongly that visual fidelity, specifically the richness of what you see, is one of the key elements to immersion. Currently, the Quest 2 as a Target standalone device is not capable of running what we design and what we need to teach as an architectural educational facility. So to maintain visual fidelity, we are pre-rendering 360 videos and providing a navigable, non-linear interface. Essentially, while Horizons is amazing at what it does not provide the visual immersion that we need. Second, we were well past knee deep in our first pipeline of projects. We were more like neck deep. And we realized that while what we had was fully playable on Quest 2, we were not able to distribute it on Quest 2. So we've completely reworked our pipeline over the last year to port everything that we're doing into Unreal Engine 5 so that we can hit the MetaQuest through the App Labs. Third, we have been watching the development of Unreal 5's Nanite and Lumen technologies, as well as real-time streaming from computers to devices like the Quest 2, and feel as though within a year or two, maybe 3 years, the level of fidelity we will be looking for on wire-free headsets like the Quest 2 will be easily available without pre-rendering. So we are proceeding to build all of our experiences now in two different ways. Pre-rendered, which will work on everything from a Google Cardboard to upper-end headsets, and within Unreal 5, so that we can match the pace of the evolving technology to allow a full 6 degrees of exploration through our VR worlds. So our very first project that we are doing this with, where we have 6 off as well as pre-rendering, is going to be called Coaster Studios VR. So one discussion that we had while showing Rising Bravery is what else do kids want? And an amusement park came up as one of the ultimate forms of escapism, and roller coasters are the heroes of the amusement parks. So now, if you've ever done a roller coaster in VR, I can pretty much also guarantee that you have also experienced extreme motion sickness in VR. So we are approaching this in a completely different way. First, we are teaming up with experts. Our hosts for the experience are professional filmmakers and travel vloggers Taylor Bybee and Sarah Anderson of Coaster Studios. They are going to guide kids through the actual design process of creating a roller coaster. So first, our project starts with what we know as architects, right? A scale model of a site. So using a Quest headset, we are simply navigating over the top of the site. This is designed to be done in a seating position, so simply leaning forward puts you directly into the site where you can explore multiple site options. In the case of this demo, I am choosing to place a roller coaster right down in the middle of a forest because I'm a little bit crazy. Once we start the coaster design, it starts like any traditional ride would with a lift hill. So we can navigate up, and now we're actually in a pre-rendered world, but with multiple outcomes and multiple selections. So we can go up the lift hill, or we can choose to stay on the ground. I'm certainly going to go up. We can choose at this point to go ahead and start moving it down, or we can choose to go higher still.
Awesome.
Going higher still, we can choose a drop to the right or to the left. Or if we're feeling particularly brave and the heights haven't made us too queasy yet, we can go up even more. So now we're at the apex of the hill. And we can see the site that we were on starts to feel familiar, actually, to the model that we were looking over. And we can even say, well, let's just kind of peek over the top of that hill and get a sense for what that's going to be like when we're going down. At any time, then, we can go back to the model and see what we built thus far to go and continue making design decisions on what the ride should do next. So we've got 2 other projects going on right now with students. This one is playing with a sense of scale in VR, which VR does amazingly well. And these students came up with the idea of what if we got so close to the bark on a tree that the bark on a tree became its own world? And what if we were in our own world of tree bark, we got so close to something inside of that that we begin to see what inspires us as architects and designers? So that manipulation of scale is something remarkable that VR does. That's a tool for architects that we've never had before. We've had proportion, but we've never actually had a sense of scale. The last project that I'll show is we are starting to branch beyond our university. So this is our first collaboration with another university. This is with Georgia State University, student Nicole Polikowski. And she had an idea of what if, rather than sort of a post-apocalyptic horror show, we could look at rising sea levels as something that could be amazing, turning buildings into aquariums. So we're actually taking this idea of something that's familiar, the skyline of New York, and beginning to make it unfamiliar, seeing it in a completely different and new way. So in closing, our architectural skill sets are uniquely positioned to work within VR. The design of space, motion, narrative, empathy, composition, tonality, and materiality are all transferable elements to VR and to the imagination of kids that need this escape. I'm going to implore you to get in contact with me and our program because of what we need: more connections, more medical teams to collaborate with, and more humans to expand our network to. We have a team of architects and developers crafting experiences as part of their education. We have methods of distributing the VR work and playing it back on nearly every kind of VR device. But we need more collaborators to help us test, refine, and realize the potential of this work and expand it beyond the spaces confined by physical walls to help promote healing and recovery. Thank you.